Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vukenja Nikekwas Vanawe Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. As usual, you are joined by Ashwin Berry and Aina Raiza Kweyo.
Happy Tuesday, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. Today is World Sketchnote Day. Now, this day celebrates the uniqueness in sketchnoting, and provides insight into what visual learners can accomplish with their notes. Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. In our top stories, Mali strongly condemns ECOWAS sanction and closes land borders. Mali's military-dominated government has strongly condemned illegal sanctions imposed on the country by the Economic Community of West African States, adding that it has closed its land borders with the state concerned. On Sunday, ECOWAS and the West African Economic and Monetary Union imposed a raft of economic and diplomatic sanctions in response to Mali's military leaders' desire to push back the election until 2025. Military spokesperson Colonel Abodua Maiga said in a televised statement on Monday that the government of Mali strongly condemns these illegal and illegitimate sanctions. ECOWAS insisted that Mali holds elections in February. The government then said it would only set an election date after holding a nationwide conference, arguing a peace vote was more important than speed.
In our second story, Somalia leaders agree to hold delayed elections. Somali leaders announced on Sunday they had struck a deal to wrap up parliamentary elections by 25 February after repeated delays that have threatened the stability of the troubled country. The ongoing election of the House of the People will be completed between the periods of 15 January and 25 February 2022, said a statement issued after the talks in the capital, Mogadishu. Robo and Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, better known by his nickname Farmayo, has been at loggerheads over the long-delayed elections, with fears their squabbling could erupt into violence. The international community has voiced its alarm over the crisis, fearing for the fate of the fragile Horn of Africa nation as it continues to battle a deadly insurgency by Al-Shabaab Islamist militants. Voting follows a complex indirect model whereby state legislators and clan delegates pick lawmakers for the national parliament, who in turn choose the president. Nearly 30,000 clan delegates are assigned to choose the 275 MPs for the lower house, while Somalia's 5 state legislatures elect senators for the 54-member upper house.
In our next story, fake COVID-19 PCR results worry police. Now, 71 people have been arrested and charged for producing a fake COVID-19 PCR result test. Botswana Police Service has announced that 56 Botswana and 15 foreigners have been arrested and charged for producing fake PCR COVID-19 test results appearing to be from government hospitals and private health facilities. It is mandatory to present a COVID-19 PCR test result when crossing the border. The police have observed that some people chose to forge the results to illegally facilitate their border exit instead of acquiring them from legitimate health facilities. BPS Public Relations Officer Senior Superintendent Nia Gabali shared the fake COVID-19 test results tournament to with the torment Ramabatlaba police. He said they have observed that the considerable number of Botswana and foreigners continue to produce fake COVID-19 results.
In Lesotho, hospitality sector owed 17 million maloti from games. Hospitality businesses that provided accommodation for the African Union Sports Council Region 5 games earlier this month are still unpaid for the services they provided, and they are demanding government pays their money in full. The total amount of money owed is 17 million maloti, and on Tuesday, the Lesotho Hotels and Hospitality Association, affected owners and officials from the Ministry of Sport, held a meeting to discuss the delayed payments. The businesses want the Sports Ministry to pay them in full for their services. However, the ministry wants to pay based on how many people stayed at these establishments during the Maseru Games. The ministry wants the businesses to sign contracts where they agree to be paid according to how many people stayed at the establishments before it releases any money to them. The hospitality businesses are rejecting the Sports Ministry's proposals because of the losses they have already incurred, such as the procurement of new beds to accommodate guests, hiring additional staff, outsourcing services, and from loans taken for service rendering.
Tanzania president tells of critics over foreign loans. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has lashed out at some top officials who have been criticizing her government for taking loans from international bodies. In a televised address from the State House, she said foreign aid was helping her government fulfill its social and development agenda. The president was receiving progress reports from ministers on how the COVID funds received from development partners have been utilized. She said unlike other countries that had used such funds to buy protective gears like gloves and masks, Tanzania had used these funds to prudently build new health centers and medical facilities. She said the money was also being used to put up new classrooms and learning facilities in many parts of the country.
Now in South Africa, Zimbabwe exemption permit holders can't be deported during grace period. Holders of the Zimbabwe exemption permits may not be arrested, detained, or deported during the 12-month grace period, the South African Department of Home Affairs has confirmed. Cabinet decided not to extend the ZEPs, which was renewed every 4 years in November last year. Home Affairs Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi officially gazetted the permit's grace period 2 days before the 31 December 2021 deadline after Cabinet agreed to grant the extension. The Gazette, which was published on Friday, indicated that no holder of the exemption can be arrested, detained, or ordered to depart for not having a valid exemption permit. Zimbabwean nationals, the document further states, are also permitted to enter into or depart from South Africa during the grace period. Those who have failed to apply for other visas after the grace period ends will be deported. The Zimbabwean government previously said that it respected the South African government's decision to not renew the ZEPs. The exemption permits were granted to more than 250,000 asylum seekers who crossed the border during Zimbabwe's political economic crisis in 2008 and 2009.
Karas farmers battle locust outbreak. Farmers in the Karas region are battling the worst area over the past few days have made matters worse.
In our next story, we are in Mozambique as 123,000 pupils affected by terrorism in Cabo Delgado. Terrorist attacks in northern Mozambique province of Cabo Delgado affected about 123,000 primary and secondary school pupils during the 2021 school year, according to the Ministry of Education. Interviewed by AI, 166 of them were able to reopen because of improved security, following offensives against the terrorist groups by the Mozambican Defense and Security Forces, supported by their allies from SADC and Rwanda.
Conservation of monuments is a priority. The protection, maintenance, and conservation of the monuments and historical sites in the province of Zaire, most of them located in the city of Banza, Congo, classified as World Heritage Site, are on the agenda of the Provincial Office for Culture, Youth and Sports. The information was released yesterday by the Director of Provincial Office of Culture, Youth and Sports in Zaire, Nzunzi Kandi, after the laying of the wreath on the bust of the first black ambassador of the former Kingdom of Congo in Vatican. Nzunzi Kandi said that the provincial government of Zaire will continue to carry out actions aimed at enhancing more and more monuments and sites, with emphasis on Congo King's Museum, the ruins of Kalubibi, the Masterical Yalakue tree, Pindi Etidi, Singuli, and the tomb of Mastampolo, among other historical places.
All right, in the last of our top stories, we are in Mauritania. Ancient manuscripts attract tourists to a historic desert city. Deep in the Sahara Desert in the northwest African nation of Mauritania lies the oasis city of Chinguetti. Founded in the 11th century, the city stood at the crossroads of the old trans-Saharan trade routes. Along with commerce, manuscripts from the Arab world were traded here, making Chinguetti a center of learning. Cultural and social development took place around this trade, most significantly a large collection of manuscripts originating from Mauritania and across the Middle East. The manuscripts, which are part of the town and Mauritania's rich cultural heritage, are under threat from the elements. The collection began in 1699 and comprises over 700 manuscripts today. The oldest manuscript in the Habot Library dates back to the 11th century. The nearby Eden Hotel embraces the town's literary legacy, offering guests a selection of books in each guest room. Chinguetti is part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which was inscribed in 1996. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. Now, if there's one conversation that has been going on, especially with regards to COVID, is whether or not to take the vaccine. Not all people have embraced science. So after the break, we'll be talking about vaccine hesitancy. Stick around. More than 10 million COVID-19 positive cases have been recorded in Africa, according to Africa CDC, and the virus has already claimed more than 230,000 lives on the continent. The World Health Organization has identified vaccination hesitancy as one of the 10 greatest threats to global health. Charles Shea Wisonge, director of Cochrane South Africa, and Sarah Cooper, a senior scientist at Cochrane South Africa, talked to The Conversation Africa about their research on vaccine hesitancy and the strategies to overcome it. Have a look.
Hi, welcome to a new episode of Pasha. My name is Ines Kosana. Thanks for joining us. Today, we talk about vaccine hesitancy. The World Health Organization identified vaccine hesitancy as one of the 10 greatest threats to global health. Joining us today is Charles Shea Wisonge, Director of Cochrane South Africa at the South African Medical Research Council. We also have Sarah Cooper, Senior Scientist at Cochrane South Africa, also at the South African Medical Research Council. You recently released research on strategies to address vaccine hesitancy. Charles, can you tell us a bit about these strategies?
Our work has shown that the nature and reasons for vaccine hesitancy are complex and context-specific, varying across time, place, disease, and vaccine. Therefore, the successful development and implementation of strategies to address vaccine hesitancy require an up-to-date understanding and then tailoring to the target setting and the target vaccine and disease. So maybe let's focus on COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy in South Africa. I think more attention needs to be placed on the legitimate worries and concerns people have about the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines. And here it is really important to provide balanced and transparent information, including about potential adverse effects, evidence gaps, and uncertainties surrounding the vaccine and the virus. We also need to make communication more local, and we need to think carefully about who should deliver the message. For example, having local information points in communities where advice is given about COVID 19 prevention, illness, and treatment would be important. Also, training trusted members of the community as vaccine champions to deliver information on COVID 19 vaccines would be good. There is also evidence that vaccination decisions are frequently influenced by advice given by healthcare workers. People often consider healthcare workers as knowledgeable about the science behind vaccination and the benefits and risks of vaccination. It is also really important to recognize that communication and information is not enough. Strong leadership and transparency around responses to the COVID-19 pandemic are important.
That's very true. And so your research focused in South Africa, but Sarah, would you say vaccine hesitancy is a big problem in South Africa?
So I think it's important to emphasize that studies on vaccine hesitancy generally in South Africa are actually still quite limited. And so our understanding of vaccine hesitancy in our country, including its extent, the determinants and strategies to prevent and address it, are really still quite underdeveloped. An emerging body of research is suggesting that vaccine hesitancy is a growing problem in the country. There's also a potential rising trend of internet-based anti-vaccination lobbying in South Africa. So, for example, a study that examined anti-vaccination web pages in South Africa between 2011 and 2013 found that advertisements appeared on more than half of the web pages, and that 2/3 of these adverts were sponsored by or linked to organizations with financial interests in discrediting vaccines. Over 90% of the web pages also claimed that vaccines were not safe. In terms of initiatives to deal with it, until recently, formalized and coordinated efforts have been limited in South Africa. However, with the COVID-19 pandemic and COVID-19 vaccine rollout, strategies to address vaccine hesitancy has acquired renewed attention as an important national public health concern. So, for example, various national vaccine hesitancy working groups have recently been established, including the South Africa's National Advisory Group on Immunization, or NAGI, and the COVID-19 Ministerial Advisory Committee. And both of these groups are providing recommendations to government for reducing vaccine hesitancy and increasing acceptance of vaccines in South Africa. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the National Department of Health has also been implementing various communication and information dissemination initiatives. And hopefully we'll see more of these going forward. And I think particularly the development and implementation of a more comprehensive public vaccine communication strategy is needed. So one that disseminates timely, accurate, and transparent information about vaccines, instills confidence amongst the population, and increases acceptance and encourages uptake of vaccines. The pandemic has also given rise to some social mobilization or advocacy around COVID-19 vaccines. For example, near the beginning of the pandemic, we saw the emergence of the People's Vaccine Campaign, which made a call to action and was endorsed by hundreds of civil society organizations. This movement really put pressure on government for access to safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines for all. Obviously, their focus was on supply and access, but I think could also really be extended to issues around acceptance and demand. Through years of HIV advocacy, we have a rich history of community engagement and literacy empowerment in the country that I think could really be drawn upon. And then finally, since 2017, our vaccine implementation research portfolio at the South African Medical Research Council has been developing a vaccine hesitancy instrument to measure vaccine hesitancy hesitancy in South Africa. We've refined the instrument and have been testing it within various settings and population groups around the country. It's still early days, but we anticipate this tool will also be a key step towards measuring and then in turn addressing vaccine hesitancy.
Would you say that vaccine hesitancy is more widespread in South Africa than other African countries, or has the country just seen more research being done?
So I think it would be wrong to say that South Africa, at least what we find in research, has worse vaccine hesitancy rates than elsewhere in Africa. I think a lot more research is being done in South Africa, and so we have a better sense of the issues and the extent and determinants. But I think what research is showing is that this is a global phenomenon, a regional phenomenon elsewhere in other African countries. I think we are experiencing that it's across the board. So I think it would be wrong to assume that it's worse in South Africa than in other African.
Welcome back. It's time to now cross over to Zimbabwe, where your favorite correspondent Talent Gore has more stories, including the one of tourist visit drops by 77% in the Zimbabwe. Talent, how are you?
Good morning, Aina. Good morning, Ashwin. And compliments of the new season to you, and compliments of the new season to all our Africa Good Morning viewers.
Compliments to you too, Talent. Please take your first story.
So Zimbabwe's tourism visits dropped by 77% last year, and the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority has contributed this decline to COVID-19 travel restrictions. Travel and tourism contributed 4.1% to Zimbabwe's GDP in 2020. Well, that is when the world was battling with the COVID-19 pandemic, and this 4.1% represented over 620 million United States dollars. Well, compared to 2019, the contribution of travel and tourism to the economy of Zimbabwe experienced a significant drop. So it is evident that the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the tourism industry quite hard around the world and in Zimbabwe, and this was mainly due to the lockdown and travel restrictions that were imposed globally. So Zimbabwe was not spared from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic to the tourism industry.
All right, now in some saddening news, Talent, more than 300 homes were destroyed by heavy rains across the country. Could you please get into this?
More than 300 homes have been destroyed by heavy rains, which have been experienced in the country, in most parts of the country since the beginning of the rainy season. The latest figures indicate that most of the destruction was caused by hailstorms, thunderstorms, lightning, and strong winds. Well, and in its latest rainfall incident report for the period ending January 5, 2022, the Civil Protection Unit said many people have been left homeless by inclement weather conditions. So the report also indicated that 320 homes, including 5 schools, suffered serious damage due to the rains, and also there are 2 children who were seriously injured during this period, who were seriously injured by these destructions.
All right, Omicron is responsible for most COVID-19 deaths. Please tell us more.
The government of Zimbabwe said that the Omicron variant is responsible for most COVID-19 deaths that have been recorded recently. The chief coordinator of the national response to the COVID-19 pandemic in the office of the president and cabinet, Dr. Agnes Mawamba, said that government scientists said that most COVID-19 related deaths were being caused by the new variant. Apparently, a total of 260 deaths were recorded between December 20 and 2021 and January 3, 2022, compared to 73 deaths which were recorded during the same period when the Delta variant fueled the second wave. So the government has said that apparently the Omicron variant is responsible for more deaths during the festive season compared to when the Delta variant was causing havoc. They say that so the Omicron is more deadlier than than the Delta variant. So people have to be responsible. They should follow the COVID-19 regulations. They should not travel as much. They should wear their mask because people were now complacent. They were no longer wearing their mask. They were no longer social distancing. So the government has said that people should continue following the COVID-19 protocols because COVID-19 is still there.
All right. Okay, now we know that Zimbabwe is the sole SADC representative at AFCON, and they had their first match yesterday. Could you tell us about that match?
So just when it looked like the Warriors had done enough to snatch a point against Africa's top-ranked side, Senegal, the whole of Zimbabwe crumbled when Sadio Mane scored a penalty in the 94th minute. So right now we are very much sad, we are saddened with this loss because we thought that we were going to get a point. We thought that we were going to hold the Africa's top-ranked side. We're going to draw 0-0, but it seemed like Senegal took a penalty and they won the match yesterday in Cameroon.
I was right there with my heart breaking with you, Talent. Thank you very much for bringing us the news stories from Zimbabwe.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
It's always good having you for the first time this year. Now, just now we're going to take a trip to Rundu and find out what Kenya Kamboe has compiled for us. But before that, here's the weather.
Have you received a loan from NASFAF? NASFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NASFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NASFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NASFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag #paybackthemoney.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, as promised, we're going to cross over to Rundu and have a chat with Kenya Kambowe as he lets us know what's going on up there. Good morning, Kenya. How are you?
Good morning, Ashwin. Good morning, Aina. How are you? And compliments of the new year to you too and the viewers.
Compliments of the new year. My people say makorokoto e gore ija. Thank you very much for joining us, Kenya. Now let's get straight into your first story. NASA, a student body movement, has called on government to introduce a ceiling amount as to what should be paid as parental contribution and their view on free education, which they describe as only a political statement. Could you please expand on that?
Yes, so basically the NASA had a press conference in Rundu yesterday whereby they had a talk about the free education as well as their observation as to the whole situation in terms of the new academic year. So basically what they were talking about basically was the issue of the parental contribution whereby some schools are having to, they are demanding a lot of money from parents and knowing that Kavango is very poor, so they are feeling much disappointed by how these schools are demanding a lot of money from parents. So, and that's why they made this call to say that there should be a ceiling in terms of as to how much parents should contribute universally across the country. And also, and they also talked about the issue of free education, which they say is not being implemented in Namibia as it was promised to the people in the past. So basically, the following video is a short clip of what transpired yesterday.
Nation was promised that the nation was promised that the parents will not be required to pay school development fund, nor buy stationery or education will be full funded and resourced by the government. However, 8 years after declaration of implementation of free compulsory education, the free education proves to be only a political statement, which is only on paper, but practical, it's not there. Especially with the featuring of provision of stationery and the parental contribution, which have replaced the school development fund. Ironically, it appears that the expenses spent by parents on the stationery and contribution on school development projects are 2 times more in the era of free education than before the implementation of free and compulsory education. NASA fails to understand what is free about this education. When parents and teachers are the one who are bearing the education expenses than the Ministry of Education. 1, we fail to understand when learners are being denied admission or report cards are withheld by schools for not affording to buy stationeries or pay the parental contribution, which is supposed to be voluntary, but is being enforced as a compulsory act. And the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture are doing nothing to make sure that they tell the schools to stop making this practice to be as free. I mean, to be as compulsory as being practiced currently.
Those are some serious and very interesting development. Now, in Rundu, a Chinese national who has raped a minor has fled the country. Kenya, please take this story and tell us more about it.
So basically, what happened was that there was a Chinese national who came to Namibia with others who in the timber industries. You know, Kavango is one of the areas targeted for timber. And so this gentleman managed to persuade the 15-year-old girl who was schooling at one of the schools in Rundu. And then they apparently developed a relationship. So basically, between the months of January and April, he was having a sexual relationship with this learner. And then she fell pregnant. And yesterday, I did some more digging into the matter. It appears that the Chinese national was basically supporting this child during her pregnancy until the month of November, when she was about to give birth. So on the 21st of December last month, the girl gave birth to a baby boy that looks has the Chinese features. That's how can I put it, like characteristics. And then now the parents went to the police to like demand that they look for this Chinese national who apparently identified himself as James, only to their surprise when they went to look for this gentleman, he was nowhere to be found because the parents so desperately wanted this child to have a birth certificate, but unfortunately that details of that gentleman cannot be included so far. But the police have indicated that they are going to search for this gentleman and hopefully will be repatriated back to the country if he has left the country.
Truly, truly, truly terrible, and we certainly hope that justice can be served. Now, in the last of your stories, Kenya, there were good rains experienced in northeastern Namibia. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. So basically, we've seen a video circulating of the Zambezi region where good rains, or like let me say flooding, as you could see, some cars couldn't move; they were stuck in water in various parts of the town of Katima Mulilo. And over the past few weeks, also Rundu, where I'm currently based, we also received some good rains as well as Divundu. But and all this is happening while other towns are still yet to receive their first rains. And the Meteorological Service of Namibia has warned that. Good rains are expected. Let me say heavy rains are yet to be expected in the northeastern regions, and people should take precaution. Like as you can see in the video, this is Rundu, and people are be really affected, especially motorists, because knowing that Rundu has a bad road network, motorists are forced to drive on the sideway simply because the gravel roads which are in town are flooded with water, potholes on the tarred roads, and so it's a very unbearable situation. But on the lighter note or a good note, farmers are happy with the good rains because now they are able to plow their fields, plant
Indeed.
their seeds, and hopefully have a good harvest at the end of the rainy season.
All right. Thank you very much,
Yes,
Kenya, for bringing us that comprehensive report from Rundu.
for having me, and see you again on Friday.
We certainly look forward to seeing you. All right, now Sonongo has been advised to hold shares in Banco Economico. If you'd like to know about this and more for economic stories, stick around. We'll be back after the break. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to dive straight into your economic news. Now, previously I highlighted this story, and it is happening in Angola as Sonongo has been advised to hold shares in BE. The board of directors of Banco Economico should increase its equity so that the state, through Sonongo, maintains its 70.38% shareholding, advised the governor of Banco Nacional de Angola, Jose de Lima Massano. In an interview with Television Zimbo, Jose de Lima Massano said that BE ex Besa was instructed to increase its capital with a minimum capital requirement of around 1.1 billion kwanzas after the approval, with recommendations of its recapitalization and restructuring plan. Unlike Banco Economico, Sonongo is selling its shares held in other financial institutions as part of the privatization program in progress since 2019 to focus on its core business. Jose de Lima Massano guaranteed that the Angolan financial system at the moment is healthy and stable, and stressed that we at this moment must say that our financial system's financial health is at a good level. Currently, the legal framework of the BNA has an architecture that is considered strong, with more modern laws with emphasis on the central bank itself, as well as those of the general regime for financial institutions, the payment system, and the fight against money laundering, capital, and financing of terrorism.
Safdeco's Angolan diamond deal recognized as 2021 a game changer. A deal by local diamond cutting and polishing firm Safdeco to buy and process diamonds from Lucapa Diamond Company in Angola has been acclaimed as one of 2021 game changers by renowned industry expert Rapa Port. In 2020, the BS side holder Safdeco entered into an agreement with the fast-rising diamond miner Lucapa Diamond Company for an opportunity to purchase up to 60% of that company's annual production at its Angolan mine. Under the deal, Safdeco buys, cuts and polishes portions of Lulo Mine's production with the two partners sharing profit from the eventual sale of stones. The deal was seen as significant as it marks the first time a diamond cutting trading firm outside the DBS Group secured supply from outside Botswana.
Now, in our next economic news story, Malawi Stock Exchange buoyant in 2021. The Malawi Stock Exchange showed signs of recovery from the impact of the COVID pandemic experienced in 2020 when it registered a positive return on index of 40.05% in 2021. This represents a 32.97 percentage points increase when compared to 7.08% return on index recorded in the preceding year. The report, however, indicates that the market registered a decrease in both volume of shares traded and total value traded compared to the corresponding period in 2020. In an interview, MSE Operations Manager Kelina Kanyangala described the performance as really good, stressing that the return on index was above inflation. All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. If you've been paying attention, AFCON is happening and we'll have your sports stories, but stick around. Before that, economic indicators. All right, it's time for us to get into the Africa Good Morning Sports package. And of course, the biggest news in the sporting world is that it is AFCON time. 4 matches were played yesterday. Morocco beat Ghana with 1-0. Guinea has taken the honors against Malawi with the same score line. And as talent highlighted earlier, much to my dismay, Senegal got the better of Zimbabwe, also with 1-0. And in the last match of the day, Gabon beat Comoros with 1-0. It seems everyone was just scoring one goal. Warming up. Let's see how it goes.
All right, in our next story, CAF increases AFCON money. Confederation of African Football on Friday increased prize money for teams participating at the 33rd Total Energies Africa Cup of Nations final. 24 teams, including Malawi, are taking part in this year's continental showpiece. According to the Confederation statement, at its executive committee meeting held in Douala, Cameroon on Friday, CAF agreed to increase the prize money. Following the change, the eventual champions of the 2022 editions are expected to pocket 5 million. In 2019, the prize money for the champion was 4.5 million. The hike represents 11%. According to CAF, the runner-up will receive 2.75 million. The semi-finalists and the quarter-finalists will get 2.2 million and 1.1 million respectively. The Confederation is also reportedly paid every participant team a decent amount of 260,000 for preliminary preparations. In addition, every participating nation will get about 475,000 as participation fee.
All right. Now, of course, at AFCON, the African spirit and patriotism comes first, but I have to say that money is motivating. Let's swing over to the world of tennis as Australian judge reinstates tennis star Djokovic's visa. Tennis star Novak Djokovic on Monday won a court battle to stay in Australia to contest the Australian Open, despite being unvaccinated against COVID-19, but the government threatened to cancel his visa a second time. Federal Circuit Court Judge Anthony Kelly reinstated Djokovic's visa, which was cancelled after his arrival last week. Government lawyer Christopher Tran told the judge after the ruling that the Minister for Citizenship, Migrant Services and Multicultural Affairs, Alex Hawke, will consider whether to exercise a personal power of cancellation. That would mean Djokovic could again face deportation and could miss the Australian Open, which starts on 17 January. Djokovic argued he did not need proof of vaccination because he had evidence that he had been infected with the coronavirus last month. Judge Kelly noted that Djokovic had provided officials at Melbourne's airport with a medical exemption given him by Tennis Australia and 2 medical panels.
In our next story, Canada swept past Spain to win a maiden ATP Cup title. Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime stormed through the gripping clash with Spanish star Roberto Agut for a massive victory that earned his country a maiden ATP Cup title on Sunday. The Novak Djokovic-led Serbia won the inaugural edition of the team's event in 2020 when Rafael Nadal led Spain also had to settle for second, with Daniil from Russia earning the title last year. The emotions are unbelievable. There is no better feeling than winning. We left everything out there, said Auger-Aliassime. Canada earned their place in the final after a stunning defending champions of Russia on Saturday. They also beat Verves, Germany, and the Britain in group matches, bouncing back after crushing the United States in their opening tie of the tournament. It was a phenomenal effort from Auger-Aliassime, who has heavily beaten the world number 2 on Saturday, losing the last 9 games in a row.
Kudos to you, Canada. That brings us to the end of our sports news stories. Stick around because we'll have your headlines after the break. Two things are guaranteed at the beginning of the day. The sun will rise and Africa Good Morning will absolutely from 7 a.m. make sure you are well informed on everything happening on the African continent and beyond. Now, if you missed our headlines at the top of the hour, worry not. Here they are. Mali strongly condemns ECOWAS sanctions, closes land borders. Somalia leaders agree to hold delayed elections. Fake COVID-19 PCR results worry police in Botswana. Hospitality sector owed 17 million maloti from games. Sonango advised to hold shares in BE. And in sports, CAF increases AFCON money. Those have been our stories.
We thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Africa Good Morning. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. You can send those remarks to there. Alternatively, we are on Facebook and Twitter. You can also post them on our pages. It's at Africa Good Morning. Please do remember that AGM is repeated on our website. Our website is called One Up 2 from 8:30 to 9:30. On that same website, you can also catch all of our other shows. Do not forget to sanitize, get vaccinated, wear your mask, and remember that we are still in the middle of a pandemic.
Stay safe, stay well. Swera Shakanaka.